Hi everyone, this is Fresher from Lab 1, and I was speaking to somebody through the Reason Talk website, and we was talking about regenerating or rebuilding an 808 sample from just like a cycle of the 808 kick. Reasons for that is so you can create your own 808 bases, so we can play around with it, but also we can pitch up the drum as if it was the actual synth, opposed to being just a sample played back faster speed at higher pitch and slower speed for lower pitches. So I came across a website which was showing a few samples, and there was some free 808 samples. So what I've got is there's a list of all the files that this pack contained, and what I'll do is I'll add in the website on the YouTube page, so at least if you want to go and get these samples yourself, you can do, and it also promotes that website for doing their work. But yeah, so you got a lot of the general sounds that you'd expect from an 808 pack, so they're all pretty straightforward standard clips from the actual machine or from a software version of the machine. And there's different stages, so you'd have different velocities or different tones, depends on how hard the signals were, or the kick drums were punched, as well as the snare, and how loud the louder you'd have an instrument playing through the electronic, the more brighter it might sound, or more punchier, and it goes more dull at the softer sound. So it sort of tries to emulate as if a real drummer was playing the kit. But we'll get back on track to what we were trying to achieve. Now I'm just going to drag in our bass sample from the pack, and we'll take a look at this sample. So as you can see, it's quite a buzzy sort of sound to it, because it's got slight tones of the 808 machine. So it's not a pure sine. As you can see, it's slightly offset. It's louder at one end compared to the other. Could be because there's the DC offset from the equipment itself. It just could be the way that the oscillator was made. So as you can see, as you progress through the kick, it's still a fairly clean sine wave. So what we're going to do is we'll try and get as close to the loudest part of the sine wave itself. Now, what is really needed in this sample editor is a zero crossover. That would help quite a bit, but for now it's a bit labour intensive, but you get out what you put in. So that is where I want the start to play, at the beginning of this point here. So what I will do is bring the start in, and we'll just zoom in so you can see I'm just about there, a couple of clicks. So you can make your own decision. I'm going to use the sampler just to fade this a little bit more, to so that it doesn't clip, or not even clip, it's being too quiet, so it doesn't actually causes any clicks that I don't want to be heard. So we've got the start of the cycle, and I want the end to finish here, so I'll just grab this one part of the waveform, and I can bring the end marker in. Now double check the end of that, because I'm going to loop this. And even though I don't know what the pitch is, yeah, that's fine. Even though I don't know what the pitch is, I'll get the NNXT to find the pitch for me and fine tune it. And I'll show you how that works in a second. So let's just crop that. So now we'll just ditch the rest of the sample. Now this could be renamed as just 808 sine kick. So I'll know just what it references. So I'll save as that. And let me just bring this a bit more open. Come on. So I want the song samples. I'm going to duplicate the sample so I can play with the second one in a moment. So I've got two samples here. This is one I'm going to actually tweak a little bit more. So if I edit this sample, now what I can do, props, you need some slightly better zoom tools. So if I grab this part, the sample, I can zoom out. Now because this first part is quite loud comparing to the bottom half, I'll just normalise that second half. Yes, I'm going to have a slight deformed shape right at the lower end. This keeps the strength of the signal up, and I have more control over how the fade out works. So my sample's all set up in the NNXT. So remember, this is just the one cycle from the kick drum from the 808 pack. Now I can literally set root note from pitch detection. So now that's telling me it's D sharp, third octave. And for my root note, so if I look on here, this is my new root note. So now I know what that is. I can shift the key group around if I wanted to, but I know that that's tuned in for me. So what I'm going to do now is I'll leave the velocity and a lot of other controls as they are. We're going to make it loop forward so it continually cycles. So now you can hear it's quite buzzy, but as you can look, the loop start and loop end are not at the 0 points. So now that's quite a chunky sounding, straightforward bass from a kick. So I can now play around with the ADSR. And it's literally tailing off on its own. Okay, so now we've got that. We want to do it so you can have a bit more of a presence at the start, so it's a bit more of a punch. So what we can do is we can use the mod envelope, and the default settings should be okay to start with. I'll just bring down the release, and we can just play around with it. I'll move the pitch Now if the pitch, you see it's moved in cents. So 4,800 cents is 48 notes, because one note is 100 cent. So you can go in quite fine with your cent controls to decide, okay, how far I'm going to go to start with. Now I've set it quite reasonable, 1 octave, just about. Yeah, there's 1 octave there. So when I play this key, I'm getting like a pitch dive. So now I can actually can tune the kick a bit more. So we'll have the timing about the same for both. And also with this kick drum sound, it's still a little bit buzzy at the top end, so we can filter it off. And we can even ADSR the filter. So the filter, let's have it 100%. We'll leave it as a low pass 12, but we'll bring this frequency down. And now we can tweak this filter till we're quite happy. So this is controlling how open it is before it tails off. And I don't want any automation at the minute. I want to use the right key, and I'll just fine tune the filter. Okay, now the last thing to think about is the monopoly. It needs to be 1, because it's going to be re-trigged, and there's only going to be 1 kick drum, as if it's just like the 808. Now the only difference is from earlier, where I had the kick just dropped in and you can play any pitch, you have to set up a loop inside that sample if you want it to create like a bass or something, or if you try to do something else with that sound. If you still had the transient still at the beginning, which is that initial crack or thud of the beater on a kick drum, the kick drum itself doesn't change pitch at all. If you hit it harder or faster, it's the faster the skin moves, the higher the pitch in real terms. But in a sampler, it just squeezes it up too fast, and it's just not feasibly possible to actually do that in real terms. So this is just another way to do it. So the monopoly mode sets it up so when I hit once and then hit again, I don't get colliding tails. So you hear that little ripple just then, it's all the samples all finishing because they've got quite a bit of time to tail off. So you can hear them wobbling, and that's what happens when the tails are too long, and you can get slight notes out of pitch, so they beat against each other and they cancel out and they double up and they fluctuate. So if we change it back down to 1, you don't get that effect happening again. It's literally just the one note chopping the end of the tail of the previous note. It's still a little bit buzzy. but then the machine itself could have that bit of buzz. And you can play around a bit. You can turn up the resonance a little bit. So you hear that little zip sort of sound. A really futuristic from the 80s sort of sound. But if you fine tune it, you can get quite some good sounds out of it. So yeah, we can play around with the decay settings on here to change the length of our initial punch, and then the release can control the tail. So it's quite quiet with a long tail, and you sort of like you release panic like a MIDI panic. You can literally just pull the release back, and then the sound will dip quicker instead of trying to find how to stop the tail from carrying on if it seems to drone on and on if you go too far. So off position for these is literally these positions here. So you can up the decay. So you can get just the beta if you wanted. So that's the front end. You can hear a little bit of the tail off. Control the release. The tail lasts that bit longer, but the decay is quite low. So that's how you can use that sine wave from your 808 kick and create your own from literally, it's just now one single sine wave. And I tuned it already, so it's as close as it's going to get for the tune. The NXT is quite good at it. So you can get your keys already in tune, so if you wanted to hit that note as the main root note of your tracks, if you're doing it in a D sharp, or if you wanted to make a track in G, you can have like a D or G. You can get some serious low end from it. And remember, that's just one sample. That's from an 808 that I've just come across online, and have recreated a kick drum using just the sample. So you can do this with any sound